Stems. Let's take a look at stems. Be able to define stem, runner, corm, tuber, rhizome, primary growth, and secondary growth. These last two are a little complicated, but they're kind of fun. Be able to list and describe roles of stems and modifications to stems. Stems have vasculature. What's vasculature? Well, it's two types of cells known as xylem and phloem. Now, these are college terms, so we're not going to define them in the on exams or anything, but let's take a look at them just to kind of get an idea. Xylem are these cells. They are dead when they are mature. They have no cell membrane. They have no nucleus. When they're mature, they just die and they keep the cell wall. And that's used to transport water and the things dissolved in water. Wood is a good example of xylem cells. So these are going to be your mature dead cells. It's wood. And xylem is found in roots, stems, and leaves. Phloem are living cells with cell membranes and nuclei, and they're used to transport sugars, and they're used to transport water as well. The bark is actually made of old dead phloem because sometimes phloem does die and it's dying on the outside of the plant. We're going to take a closer look at this later. Roots, stems, and leaves have phloem. Now, when I say roots, stems, and leaves, you can think about which plants have these, and it's everything except the mosses. This includes everything we call vascular plants. Ferns, gymnosperms, and angiosperms are all vascular plants because they have vasculature, i.e. xylem and phloem. Now, young stems undergo something called primary growth. This is when stems are going to grow taller or grow longer. Think of growth in that dimension of getting taller or longer. Stem tissue of primary growth is soft, it is bendable, it's flexible, and primary growth usually lasts about 1 year. So we're thinking growing up fast. Think about things like beans. Those are all primary growth. This is opposed to secondary growth, which is done in older stems. It's when stems grow thicker. So this is the worth of girth with these stems. They're going to have this growth plate between the xylem cells and the phloem cells. So look at this log here, and you can see that you have all these rings. That's where the growth plate was in previous years. What happens is it's going to grow new xylem cells and push them on the inside. It's going to grow new phloem cells and push them to the outside. This growth plate is also called the cambium, and it's actually edible, just not very tasty. Now, as the plant gets more secondary growth, those older xylem cells are going to, well, first, they're going to be called sapwood because they're going to move the water and the sap. Later, they're going to fill up with tannins and aromatics, and this will cause them to become darker. Think like tannins in your tea make for darker tea, and that is going to make it into heartwood, which no longer is transporting water, but now functions as a type of structure. And it's, well, very hard and also very resistant to decay. Now, on the other side of that cambium growth plate, you're going to have new phloem cells, and they're going to be transporting sugars and water and other things that the plant needs. And as they grow older, if they die, they're going to turn into the bark. So the bark is going to be your old phloem cells. And often those are going to just kind of fall off as the bark gets abraded. Now, secondary growth is made to last for many years, as you can see by the rings in this tree. Some modifications of stems. Let's think about this. Runners, they're stems that are going to spread above ground and they're going to produce these adventitious roots. You're going to see that term a lot. Adventitious roots means roots that form not from where old roots were, basically new roots forming in a new location. And wherever this runner touches the dirt, it's going to make adventitious roots that are going to grow into the soil and start rooting. And then it's also going to grow new leaves and a new above ground stem. That's basically a new plant. So runners are this form of asexual reproduction, which allows the plant to make little plantlets as it moves horizontally. Another storage thing is for the next year, you have storage of starches and such in a corm. So a corm is kind of like a bulb. And again, you see it's going to make these adventitious roots. So you can pick these out of the soil, move them around, and replant them, which is great for a horticulturalist. They also make these daughter corms coming off of the side, which will likewise make new adventitious roots when they're put in the soil the next year. Again, a form of asexual reproduction that allows you to make copies of the same plant. What about some greater amount of storage? Well, that's for tubers. So a potato is an underground stem that is filled with starch. Where there would be those leaves coming off of the side, you have little eyes. Now, what happens underneath leaves is often that's a space where a branch can grow in the future. And what you see growing out of those eyes are new branches coming off of this stem. Of course, you can take this stem and cut it into segments with an eye for each segment, and they will grow adventitious roots and new branches, which will grow into a new plant. Again, another form of asexual reproduction. And all that storage is going to give that new plant quite a new lease on life, because potatoes are bigger than seeds, well, for the most part. Then you have underground horizontal stems. So runners are above ground horizontal stems. Rhizomes are underground horizontal stems that will spread plants to new places. And this is what grasses do. Remember, a grass superpower is being able to regrow quickly after a fire or after being grazed. By putting their stems underground and pushing to the side, they are going to make these new rhizomes, which allow them to grow in new and adjacent areas. This is also true for the plant salal. You may notice I won't recommend putting salal in a garden. That's because it produces rhizomes that can go pretty deep and then come back up in your yard. And again, this is a form of asexual reproduction. So the importance of stems to a horticulturalist is that this allows you to make new copies of the plant. Think about if you had a really tasty red potato. Well, you cut an eye off of it, you plant it in your garden, and then the next year you can get 20 new potatoes, which allows you to make more plants that are all the same, that have the same qualities that you like in one of them. We can also shape the stems into certain shapes to make for decorative plants. We're going to look later at the use of auxin, a root hormone that is going to make new roots on a stem. Essentially, you can take a stem, give it auxin, and it will make adventitious roots, which give you a new plant. We're also going to look at nodes and how they make new leaves. So stems are very important to the horticulturalist.